In the previous episode, we explored liquidity runway. We established that liquidity preserves survivability, decision quality, strategic patience, and future optionality. In this video, we examine the third dimension of the adaptive financial benchmarking framework, total fixed cost rigidity. Because the structure of recurring obligations fundamentally determines how adaptive the system can become. And this is one of the most underestimated forces in household finance. Because many households do not collapse from lack of income alone, they collapse because the operating structure became too rigid. Fixed cost rigidity measures how much of the household operating structure is locked into recurring obligations that cannot easily adjust downward. Examples include mortgage payments, both principal and interest, or rent depending on the situation. Vehicle financing, again, both the car principal payment on the car loan and the interest. Insurance, any other debt servicing, subscriptions, if they can't be canceled easily, childcare obligations, and recurring contractual commitments. A simplified fixed cost rigidity ratio might be represented as fixed cost rigidity ratio is equal to recurring fixed obligations divided by income. And again, those recurring fixed obligations, they will show up. If you're looking at your contribution income statement, they'll be under both the fixed lifestyle and the fixed and potentially variable financing charges section. And that's dealt with in another video on this channel. This ratio matters enormously because the higher the fixed cost rigidity, the less adaptable the system becomes during uncertainty. And essentially what this fixed cost rigidity ratio does is it tells you how much degree of combined leverage is within the system. In corporate finance, we often discuss operating leverage. High fixed cost structures amplify both upside and downside. The exact same principle exists in households. When fixed obligations consume a large portion of income, even relatively small disruptions can create cash flow compression, liquidity deterioration, stress escalation, and forced decision making. This is why highly rigid structures often appear stable during expansion, but fragile during contraction. To benchmark rigidity meaningfully, we need target ranges. Example fixed cost rigidity benchmarks might look like this. Below 25%, highly adaptive. 25 to 40%, moderate flexibility. 40 to 55%, elevated rigidity. 55 to 70%, high fragility risk. And above 70%, severe structural compression. Again, these are not moral judgments, they are structural observations. Higher rigidity creates greater dependency on stable income, lower shock absorption, reduced strategic flexibility, and compressed optionality. One of the most dangerous patterns in personal finance is lifestyle lock-in. As income rises, many households gradually commit themselves to larger mortgages, higher vehicle payments, premium recurring services, finance consumption, and structurally rigid lifestyles. Over time, the household slowly loses adaptability. Importantly, this often happens invisibly, because rising income can temporarily mask rising fragility until uncertainty eventually arrives. This is where the interaction between dimensions becomes critically important, because fixed cost rigidity directly impacts liquidity runway. Two households may possess identical liquidity reserves, but the household with lower fixed obligations, greater spending flexibility, and lower recurring commitments will often maintain dramatically longer survivability capacity. This is why optionality is multidimensional. Strong systems are not optimized through one variable alone. They are balanced structurally across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Rigid systems also affect psychology. Highly rigid structures often create chronic stress, dependency pressure, fear of disruption, career inflexibility, and reactive decision-making. This is important because financial rigidity frequently reduces strategic freedom. People may remain in unhealthy careers, poor geographic environments, weak opportunities, or undesirable situations simply because the structure cannot absorb volatility. And over time, this can compress not only financial flexibility, but life flexibility itself. Ultimately, lower fixed cost rigidity creates optionality. Because flexible systems can adapt faster, absorb uncertainty better, preserve liquidity longer, pivot strategically, and avoid forced decisions. This is why strong systems prioritize flexibility over appearance, because externally impressive structures can still be internally fragile. And often, true resilience comes not from maximizing visible consumption, but from preserving adaptive capacity. In this episode, we explored the third major dimension of adaptive financial architecture, total fixed cost rigidity. We examined operating leverage within households, benchmark rigidity ranges, lifestyle lock-in, liquidity compression, psychological rigidity, and how recurring obligations shape adaptive flexibility over time. But fixed cost rigidity is only part of the structural equation, because another force can amplify rigidity dramatically: leverage pressure. And this is where the next dimension takes us. In the next episode, we'll examine leverage pressure benchmarking. We'll explore debt amplification, financing fragility, solvency pressure, structural dependency, and why leverage can either accelerate opportunity or magnify instability.